All right, we've got a bit of a different video today, and this is a different hobby that I normally share on this channel. And I've got my family fish tank here. I've let all the algae kind of grow up on the screen here. I've got all of the plants that have just sort of overgrown, and making this fish tank look pretty crowded. And it's starting to be in a position now where it needs a little bit of TLC. And I'm going to talk you through that process today as I do it. And hopefully the intention here is this might be a quite relaxing video to watch, but hopefully you'll enjoy it and learn something about fish tanks while we do so. So first thing I'm going to do is open up my fish tank cabinet door here, and I've got my buckets. I'm going to give this filter, the pre-filter for this fish tank canister filter, a clean. So what I can do is pull out this part of my canister filter, which kind of filters out most of the gunk before it gets into the main body of the filter, which is what then pumps the clean water back into the fish tank. So let's take this camera and I will show you how this process works. It's pretty gunky. This is probably the grimmest part of the process now. So we're going to take it through to the sink, and you might think this is a bit gross doing this in the sink, but I got nowhere else to do it. I'm just going to set this up here if I can. So within this filter, if I just twist it, you can see there's loads of gross sort of sponges in there, and within those sponges is a couple of weeks worth of fish poo, plants, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So we're going to give that a good clean, stick it back in the filter, and then we should be in a pretty good, that's quite hot, and we should be in a pretty good space in terms of cleaning the tank then once this is done. So you can see all of the plant matter, all of the fish poop, etc. coming off. I'm just going to do this until the sponges are completely clean, put it all back together, and then we'll get on with the rest of the maintenance session. So we can see now how much cleaner that is. We're just going to stick that in here. That's our pre-filter, sort of clean and reassembled. And then we're going to chuck it back in the filter and carry on with the rest of our maintenance. That is this part of the maintenance sort of complete. If I just sort of fiddle that back in there, flip the switches back so that it's all connected. And you can see the next steps. Turn off the heater, which is already off. I can close that door, and then we can start looking at some of the other parts of the maintenance now. So the next step for the maintenance session is just to take a little bit of this water out at the top so that I can get in there and scrub without fear of the water splashing out of the sides. So I've got this sort of tube here. What I do is I stick this one in the tank, the fat one in the tank, and I just pump this one. When I squeeze it, it kind of sucks and it acts like a siphon. So I can fill up this big 30-litre bucket with water, go and chuck it in the garden, and then give this a good clean. So that's the next step. You can see now that is filling up the bucket. And what I used to do before I put plants in here was use this to sort of hoover up all of the crap at the bottom of the what do you call it, the fish tank. But the plants actually eat that crap, so I don't bother hoovering it up anymore. It's not like I say, it's not a bad thing to have that sort of gunk in the fish tank. It just looks messy for humans. I think fish actually prefer it because it produces sort of natural food for them. So once we've siphoned this down enough, what I'm going to do is clean the glass. Oh, I've forgotten to do something. Let me show you what I've got on this side. If I pull the siphon out, just pull that out for now. And if I position this over here, what you can see is I've got a like a pump that pushes water around, and it keeps the circulation in the fish tank going so that it doesn't sort of stagnate and turn into like a horrible water conditioned area for the fish. So I just need to turn that off a minute. Let me do that now. There we are. All right, so that's off. I can continue siphoning water. I'll turn that back on in a bit. So next step, reduce the water level probably by another 20 litres. Scrape all of this green stuff off of the screen. We will then fill it back up with water, and then we'll start sort of pruning back these plants, which I'll show you that too. And you'll see a bit of a transformation, I think, in terms of where we started this morning's maintenance session to where we end it. And while I won't claim that this is a perfect fish tank, it is good fun for me. I really enjoy it. And I do quite often lose a lot of time staring into this tank and watching the fish play with the plants and chase each other. I do get a lot of satisfaction from this hobby, even if it's not as sexy or as exciting as all the peripherals, etc., that I cover on the channel more frequently. All right, that is probably enough water out now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to chuck this bucket in the garden, chuck it all over the grass. The grass will love it because it's all full of nutrients that will help it grow. And then I'll pop back and we'll scrape this all back with a card. Alrighty, so here we are, next step of the maintenance session. So I've got an old debit card here, and I am just going to scrape the screen, get all of this stuff off of the screen, which will just give us a much better sort of window-like view, less gunky, less gross view into this little bit of nature in my living room. So I'll do this nice and quick. Probably take me 3 or 4 minutes to do this whole tank like this. One of the issues I have with this tank in particular, it's the only tank I have at the moment, but is that the bit where my arm goes in is just a little bit too small. So I wrestle with that as I do this, but I can just see all of that stuff coming off really nicely. All of the fish running to the back of the tank just to hide from me, which is kind of understandable. You can imagine if a giant came into your house and started grabbing things and throwing it around, you'd probably be a little bit scared too. One thing you have to be careful of sometimes with fish, depending on what you keep, is filling it all the way to the top can be a problem sometimes because fish like to jump. And I have had a fish jump out of the fish tank before. And I just scramble around like an idiot trying to find a way of getting it back in there without hurting it. So luckily I was there and I was able to pick it up. But if I wasn't there, that could have been a problem. Could have come back to a dried up fish on the floor, which is not something you want your kids to come home to after school. I'm actually going to scrape this bit off here and all this horrible crap and stick this in the bucket because I don't necessarily want that thick stuff going back in the tank. Most of this green stuff here, the reason why I don't mind keeping it in the tank is because I've got some fish in there that like to eat it. They just don't eat enough of it because there's not that many of them. So it's just a bit of like naturally reoccurring food. And the reason why it's so thick on here, it hasn't always been this bad, is because I've recently just put in a more powerful light, which is why all of the plants have gone absolutely gangbusters. But it also means that the algae builds up a little bit quicker, which again isn't a problem, but it's just something that I need to manage. I expect some people watching this would be like, I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to put my hand in there and touch all of this stuff. And this is sort of part of the hobby that I enjoy almost the most. It's just so satisfying to like have a really mucky tank and then give it a good clean, because it looks really nice afterwards, and you'll see that shortly. So yeah, the maintenance of the fish tank is part of what I enjoy the most about this hobby, really, even though I do leave it a while to do it. Right, so that is there or thereabouts in terms of that screen looking clean. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take my smaller bucket back into the kitchen. I'm going to fill it up with tap water, and I'm going to put some of this stuff, stress coat, dechlorinator, in the water so that it doesn't kill any of the bacteria, any of the helpful bacteria in the tank. And then I'm going to fill it back up again, cut all of these sort of foliage back, because the foliage actually is causing a problem how thick it is at the moment. The light isn't able to get all the way to the bottom, and then the plants at the bottom are starting to die because there's no light getting to them. So I'll do that. I'll chop all of that back such that it's all sort of equally getting light. At least I'll try to. And then we'll switch it all back on. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. I'll be back momentarily. And just watch the fish now when I pour this in, how much they enjoy having the fresh water come into the tank. I'll try not to get in the way. Quite often when I do this, the fish come and kind of swim in the bit that's fresh. They'll chase each other around in it. I mean, fish are pretty stupid, but it's fun just to watch their natural behaviours. You can imagine if this was a waterfall, this is what they would be doing in the wild. Of course, there's a temperature difference between the water that I'm putting in and the water that's already in there. I do try to match it, but naturally it will be different. So the fish get excited by that and they start dancing around, enjoying that too. So you can see now, obviously, all of the fish are kind of in the area where the fresh water was and kicking up all of the muck. So they're kind of eating the muck, which might be a bit gross, but that's kind of what fish do. Right, here we are for the second one. Chuck this one in. Just see how much more we have to go. Probably 2 more after this. So that chemical that I put in the water before I chuck it back in the tank takes the chlorine out of the water so that it doesn't cause any issues in the tank, because chlorine is designed to kill bacteria. Obviously tap water has chlorine in it, and fish tanks are run based on their balance of good and bad bacteria. So if I was to chuck loads of chlorinated water in here now, all of my fish would be dead by the morning, because the ecosystem that I've developed through building up that bacteria, in the both good and the bad stuff, would just be wiped out through chlorinated water, which is why we use the medicine in the water, the dechlorinator, to get rid of it before we put it in the tank. Almost done for water now, and the angelfish has come and take a little look. I noticed yesterday the angelfish has got something wrong with its left eye, which is a little bit unfortunate. I'm hoping it's not a big issue. I need to do a little bit of research into that, but his left eye seems to have almost popped out of his head, which is gross. But here we are, fish are pretty resilient. Chuck this water in, we've probably got room for a little bit more maybe. And then we'll do some grooming. In fact, that looks pretty good to me. That is as full as I'd want it to be, so I won't put any more water in. Instead, what I will do is get my scissors, my fish tank scissors, which are here. Kind of curvy kind of scissors. They work quite well for like snipping under branches and roots. So I'm just gonna do a load of cutting now. And then when I'm done with the cutting, we're pretty much just in a place of turning back on the filter, turning back on this thing at the back that pushes all the water around the tank to the filter. And then we're done. We can let the fish enjoy their new clean environment. So I'm just gonna start cutting all of the really tall bits, because these plants grow really fast. So I'm just gonna cut them low so that we don't have to keep coming in here and doing this as we go. So it'll look really bare to start with, and in a couple of weeks this will all grow back up again to be exactly how it was a minute ago. The good thing about these plants growing like they do is that they suck all of this bacteria, all of the what fish keepers call like mulm, basically like the poo, the food, the excess food, etc., out of the bottom of the tank, which turns it from being something that could be quite harmful to being something really positive, because it helps the fish tank grow and turn into something different. So the plants are real plants. They grow based on what's in the sand at the bottom, and if I can help them do that by allowing some of this stuff to build up in the bottom, because I don't want to keep putting fertilizer in, then that's what I will do. So I'm just going to cut this all right back. The crazy thing about this tank, the transformation it's gone through in recent times is quite impressive, really. So this tank was very bare in terms of plants about 2 months ago, and as I say, I put in a new light not that long ago, which has just made it go absolutely gangbusters, which is great fun to see. I love watching it change based on small changes to the environment. You know, can make big impacts to a fish tank like this. So I'm just going to cut all of this right back, because I know it will grow back again. And as you can see, the further back I go with this cutting, the less like branches there are on these plants, and the reason for that is because they're not all getting light, which is why I need to cut it back. Basically what that means is where there were branches before, they've kind of shedded them because they weren't benefiting the plant, and all of that organic matter then goes into the tank and has potential to cause problems. If there's too much organic matter, it will cause an ammonia spike, which is the harmful bacteria that I kind of touched on earlier, and it will kill everything in here because it will just burn them. Ammonia sort of burns the gills on the fish so they can't breathe. At least that's my understanding. Here we are. Right, so that's that side of the tank done. Just going to pull all of this crap out now. Yoink, chuck it in the bucket. Just hope that I don't pull a fish out at the same time. Done that before. And then I will, of course, run a towel around the tank afterwards, because it does get pretty wet in here when I'm doing this. What are we doing? Just pull that out. Making a big mess today. Right, here we are. So you can see it's starting to really clear up across the top of the tank now. Get a lot more space for the fish to swim in this area specifically. And it's only these sort of stringy or bushy plants that I'm cutting at the moment, because the other ones grow much slower and they're not right at the top of the tank yet. So I'll give them a chance to grow again before I cut those ones down. But I will need to do some trimming of those plants on this side in a moment. Just use my scissors to get as low as I want to on this. I'm not being as careful as I have been in the past, because I've observed how fast this stuff grows, so I'm not too worried about it looking crap at the start of this sort of cycle, because I know it will grow back into quite a bushy tank again. So I'm not too concerned about it looking amazing immediately. And I've got a big piece of wood in here that you probably haven't seen yet, because it's been covered by the things in the foreground. So as I cut this back, you'll see this big chunk of wood, and all of these different kind of environmental things in this tank just act as places for the fish to hide, and not just from the humans in my house, but also from the other fish in the tank. Fish are nightmares for biting each other and, you know, bullying each other. So if you can create places for them to hide, it just means that they're happier. They haven't got quite so much stress in their environment, which is why I've got little pieces of wood dotted around, loads of plants now, and the fish seem a lot happier for it. These two bits, and then we are pretty much done for the bushy plants. It's just these ones at the back, which I will be a little bit more careful of how I cut them. And I cut them right where they need to be cut, not just as low as I can get. And just to keep these plants in this corner, so we've got a different kind of area of the tank for the fish to go. Get in there, there we are. Right, pull my scissors out, and then I can collect the rest of this stuff that I've just cut, which is quite a significant amount of plants. So we'll just pull those out now. Get those in there. What you could do if you needed to, if you had a relatively new tank, is replant all of this stuff. You can just chuck it straight back in the sand. But because, as you've seen, the tank is quite overgrown, I'm just going to get rid of this because I know I don't need any more necessarily to be in there. So when I was planting for the first time, I used to sort of cut the tips off and then stick them straight back in the ground so that they'd spawn another plant. What I've found with this bushy one in particular is that it sends runners out. So it's a bit like grass. If you plant grass somewhere in your garden, it will just spread out across the whole lawn. That's kind of what this bushy plant is doing in my tank at the moment. One thing I'm considering doing next to make this even cooler, an even cooler fish tank and an environment for the fish, is to get some floating plants across the top, which might just slow down the rate of things growing a bit, which I think would be helpful given how fast, this will take 2 weeks maybe for this to grow up again, maybe 3 weeks for it to grow up again as much as it did at the start of this video. So I might get some floating plants just to block some of the light getting through. Just cut that one piece at the back, which I have missed. And that'll also just give the fish somewhere else to hide, which is somewhere a bit different to what they've got at the moment, which is always a good thing. And now what I do, I've got my old fish net. Just going to run this through the tank, try and pick up as much of these dead leaves as possible, because if I don't, they'll just get stuck in the filter when I turn it on, which isn't a bad thing, but I just would rather not overload the filter immediately if I can avoid it. Don't need it to be perfect, because I'll be collecting leaves out of here now for the next probably few days. But you can see now there are plants in there on the wood that you couldn't see before. They'll now have a better chance to grow. It's quite exciting fish maintenance day for me. I think the fish like it too. I expect you can probably observe the fish better now from the camera's perspective than you could at the start of this video. So they'll have a few weeks of an open fish tank experience, and then when it's all grown over again, it'll be like a big bush for them to play in and wrestle with each other in. But basically, see if I can get the camera in there. Got a bucket full of leaves and plants, and that'll all go in the food compost. And then yeah, I think we are ready to turn this pump back on. So you'll be able to see it now as well. When I turn this on at the back, you'll see all of this stuff that's now kind of just floating aimlessly in this section of the tank will just get blown around, and that's really what that pump is for. You see it now. Pump is on, sort of slowly pushing water this way, and as it gets more and more into its rhythm, that will push it around back into that pump on this side. So if I turn that pump on now, we'll have two sources of circulation from that side of the tank. And there we are. So I'm just going to close that, close this. I'm going to go and get something to wipe this screen with, and then we'll be pretty much done. So I've got an anti-back wipe here. Not that I need to anti-back it, but just something that's a bit wet. A wet wipe would have been fine if I had one to hand. Just give the screen a bit of a clean. You can see the fish are enjoying it in there now. Just wipe all of this water off. And it'll be nice and clean for us then, just to watch and observe how they do. So It's really cool hobby. There's plenty of fish in here that you can't see because they're quite like secretive fish. I've got some coolie loaches and a couple other odds and sods, some Borneo loaches, some other cool things in there. But you won't see those on this video because they're probably hiding for the moment. And there we are. Let me get the camera and I will show you how much this has changed now since the start. So I'll just lean back a little bit. Certainly looks very different to when we started, and that was done in about 40 minutes. Something that I really enjoy doing, and all of that stuff in the water column at the moment, all those little bits you can see will be blown into the filter, or they'll settle down into the sand and become plant food, which is really cool. Quite often in the evenings I just sit and watch these little things just buzz around without a care in the world, just doing what fish do, swimming in circles basically. It's a really nice hobby just to decompress after a long day at work. Anyway, I'm in danger of waffling, so I hope you have enjoyed this somewhat relaxing, educational hobby pollination video, and I will catch you in the future.